FN is one of the most respected manufacturers in the industry and has brought forth some of the most iconic designs in the world. They even worked with the undisputed giant of the last 2 centuries, John Moses Browning. They brought forth systems like the M2, the High Power, and the MAG, or as I knew and carried it, the M240 Bravo. Even the M4 I was issued in the Army was made by FN, a fact that many have tried to dispute with me, despite the fact that they didn't happen to be there. But the FNs were always solid, reliable, and worked in extremely rough conditions. This reputation stayed with me and I came to love FN's products. I got the first SCAR that came to Colorado, and when the FNAR was released, I scraped together enough cash to get one even though I was a broke college student. And when the 509 was announced, I made regular trips to my favorite sporting goods store until I got one to put in my hand, and I liked it and it pointed well. But at the time I was running quite a few Glocks instead, so I tricked myself into thinking that the cost that was equal to a student loan payment wasn't worth it. Until I got one. And I still loved it. In fact, I love it so much that I'm going to give one of you an FM 509. And of course you can go to our web store and pick one up right now. But more on that later. The 509 midsize that I picked up is nothing that I would call groundbreaking. The innovators at FN were too busy working on new flavors of SCARs and 5.7s. The 509, on the other hand, is a study in fundamentals. The grip is comfortable with pyramidal texturing that offers a good purchase but doesn't really create hot spots on your hand. The mag release is placed in a position where you don't have to break your grip to activate it. And the slide release is prominent, but not too much so. The serrations are generous, particularly on the front, so that you can manipulate it easily if you're running an optic. And the magazine has just enough of a lip on it that you can strip the magazine out if you need to, or that doing reloads with retentions is not too much of a problem. Accuracy with the 509 is adequate. I certainly wouldn't call it exceptional. Bill drills with it were easy enough to pull off, but when I moved to some finer accuracy drills, I just wasn't seeing the results I really wanted, nor expected. Now, normally I would chalk this up to me being rusty because I can't be bothered to go shoot when it's 15 degrees outside. But I switched to my 365 XL, my EDC, and got results that were more in line with what I would expect. And that brings me to something that is not the shining point of the 509. I hate this trigger so much. God, I hate this trigger. The trigger. Smith & Wesson learned their lesson with articulated triggers, or hinge triggers. The hinge is actually a safety mechanism that prevents the trigger from traveling without a finger putting pressure on it. Now, Glock probably made this feature most famous with the blade in their trigger, but Smith & Wesson and FN thought they could do it better. They didn't. Smith eventually abandoned this after an Apex trigger became known as an almost necessary upgrade for the M&P. But FN is onerously committed to this. And that's just part of the issue. The hinge itself gives the first contact with the trigger a spongy feel, followed by a gritty, slightly stagey take-up to the first nebulous wall, then a minuscule amount of travel to a very solid wall with a heavy break that actually kind of shuffles through itself as you feel the polymer trigger rub on the frame. followed by a bit of over travel that I can't actually criticize. The reset is not terrible, but not what I would argue is short either. And the trigger pull was a stout 7 3/4 pounds. Now, FN knows this is a problem, which is why on their LS Edge series of the 509, they actually have a Glock-like blade on there that they still manage to make feel a little bit spongy on the take-up, but it's far more predictable and repeatable, and way easier to manage from trigger pull, despite the fact that they're about the same trigger weight. Now, it's not 1992, and you are not watching this review on a cathode ray tube TV. But if you are, that's kind of impressive to jump through all those hoops just for nostalgia's sake. But I digress. The quality of striker-fired triggers we have now is insane. FN, you need to stop what you're doing right now and fix this trigger. If you were to do that, this would be an absolute top-tier system, and I would have to nitpick like crazy to find anything I dislike about the 509. The recoil on the 509 is very soft, and it's very flat shooting. It almost feels like you're running a compensated system. Even with some really spicy 147 grain plus P loads, it shoots incredibly flat. Bill drills are a drill that I rely on a lot. The 509 seems to tolerate pushing the times faster. Once splits are below 0.5 seconds, the 509 feels like it's on rails, until I start pushing faster. Once I was getting below 0.3 second splits, the group opened up a lot. When I reviewed some footage, I could see that I was struggling with the indecisiveness of the trigger. I've harped on the trigger long enough at this point, and this is the last I'll say. It's very frustrating to have so many parts of the whole working so well together, only to have them bottlenecked at the trigger. The 509 has the potential to be a legend if they can get this resolved in the factory. The 509 has a bunch of trim options from the factory, from just the base model with a slick slide and standard height sights, all the way up to a full tactical model with threaded barrel, suppressor height sights, extendo mags, and an optic cut. Mine was the MRD with optic cut slide and elevated sights to co-witness with any optic that will fit. At first glance, it seems like the world is your oyster with a giant freaking parts kit that comes with it. The manual states that it'll work with Trijicon RMR, Leupold Delta Point, Aimpoint Acro, and Vortex Venom footprints. Seeing this, I immediately grabbed a Steiner MPS that I had been waiting to try. The proprietary screws from FM were too wide to work with the provided plate from Steiner, and the Steiner screws were the wrong thread pitch. Okay, how about the EOTech? It's a Delta Point footprint. Nope. Screw shoulder was wrong. Fine, Holosun 507 go. Wrong again. FN screws were too wide with the wrong shoulder. A Holosun 407K fit it, but the large iron sights left it with a really crowded sight picture through the smaller optic. The only thing that I had would fit was the Raton Tactics, which was matched to the RMR mounting hardware perfectly. But at the range, the Raton was consistently too bright for my eyes. And as luck would have it, I found an SRO hidden away like a cursed tome. Of course it popped on just fine, and it worked as well as you would have expected. But because of the forward setting of the lens housing, I was experiencing impacts from brass on the lens bezel. I don't think they ever hit the lens itself, but the bezel was getting some brass marks. What you should take away from this is if you are getting an optic-ready 509, then you are getting an RMR. The Delta Point and Venom are basically dead optics, and the Acro has never been as impressive as Aimpoint would like us to believe. Just get on Amazon and get an RMR for like $2 above cost. Trijicon really doesn't seem to care about the price fixing, so you might as well benefit from it too. The FM mounting system is great, but very tailored to what it can fit. The 509 is one of the systems that when I pick it up, I marvel at how much FN got right with it. And it's not surprising given FN's long history of producing high quality systems with the odd issue here and there. And yeah, I went on about the trigger for quite some time, but there's nothing here to stop you from 100%ing a police or military qualification on it. That's totally on you. Well, yes, trigger snobs will fixate on that and not let it go. M-Carbo and Apex triggers both have options to help you with that. Yes, the 509 has a somewhat limited optics mounting system on it, but the RMR is the one to beat right now. So let's be honest. If you come to me complaining that you had to put what is arguably the best handgun optic on your 509, I'm gonna make fun of you. The 509 deserves a lot more attention and respect than I feel like it gets, and that's why I chose it for our next giveaway. We are giving away a 509 so that a lucky one of you can join the FN fan club and look down on the mere mortals who own not FNs. All you have to do is go to jerrysoutdoorsports.com. You can get signed up there, and you can browse our other products too while you're there. And we're starting to work on in-store alerts for our physical location. Anyway, I'm Chris with Jerry's Outdoor Sports, and I'll see you next time.